talk facilitation, Jerry.
Yeah. Hey, I put the fun in dysfunction, man.
Everything in facilitation is designed to reduce dysfunction
And increase consensus. Does my head look fat? I'm backing up now. Whoa, dude. That was a facilitation fail.
Consensus is?
I can live with it and support it. That's
All
the
right,
thing I'm going to get a tattoo of right there.
Here we go. Facilitation straight talk.
Boom.
Boom. Welcome, Christine. Thanks for joining Jerry and I in our facilitation adventure and volunteering to be our first interviewee for our video series. Our goal for these interview videos is to explore the realm of facilitation. In this case, from the lens or the angle of the good, the bad, and the ugly of our own stories of facilitation. Because honestly, that's where true knowledge kind of gets passed on. It's in the storytelling, right? So we learn from each other's successes and failures, and we can share what facilitation means to us and how it's impacted us both personally and professionally. So I'm going to insert the little official disclaimer here just to keep us in the clear. All the views expressed today are Christine's personal views. She's not here to officially represent her unit, the Marine Corps, in support of our company or facilitation. It's just Christine, the person, here to share with us. Before I turn the mic over to you, Jerry, let me just say that Christine was a student in our very first course. And we told her then, and it still holds true today, that she is our MVP. Because without knowing it, most likely you don't know this, Christine, is that you did several things for Jerry and I. First of all, you validated the why that we had for this course. You increased our passion for what we're doing, and mainly it was because you're a respected member and leader in Intel, and you immediately grasped the importance of the nature of the skills that we were teaching, and then went out and embraced them. And the other thing you did for us is you made the course better by giving us great recommendations on how we can improve it. So without further ado, Jerry, I'm going to turn the mic over to you to hit Christine with the first question.
Yeah, so Christine needs no introduction. I feel like I've known her forever, to be honest with you. And I'm sure Aaron feels the same way from us going through the class together. But for the people that don't know you, Christine, tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're working now, what you're doing in the military. And after that, tell us what your past experience or training, if any, did you have with facilitation?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for having me on. I am an intelligence operations and fusion warrant officer. So it's an 0205 is my OC field specialty in the Marine Corps. I'm a Chief Warrant Officer 3, and I'm currently at 1st Intel Battalion in Camp Pendleton, California. My capacity right now at my unit is the intelligence training officers. I've been able to just facilitate getting good training and courses here for the Marines in the battalion. Kind of always looking for opportunities for growth for the Marines in the unit. So with facilitation, really this course is the first formal training I've done with facilitation. Since then, I was able to go into a course for project management. It's the Agile Certified Practitioner, and I just got my certification for that. As far as formal training goes, I think that something most similar is just really leadership training that we get in the Marine Corps, which kind of lays the foundation for what we strive to be as leaders. But I will say, I was going to kind of save this towards the end, but I think it fits in pretty well here that it's really facilitation is kind of how I see the how we are leaders and how we, we lead people, how we can really make the most out of the opportunities that we have whenever we're in a position to have influence.
So I can't help myself. I have to ask this question here. Just from my own experience, 29 years in the Marine Corps, we spend a lot of time teaching, of course, leadership on the one hand. And then on the other hand, it's all about process, and workflows. So for me personally, I got facilitation probably about 4 or 5 years before I retired. And I just wished I'd had it so much earlier in my career. From your experience, was it something new that you could kind of add to your leadership toolkit, or kind of how did it fit in with where you were as a leader?
So I will say it was new because it formalized for me what's always been very intangible, the interpersonal skills, the aspect of just interacting with humans on a normal basis. There's
Right.
never any tangible way to kind of put your hands around that. And with your course, I think what that was is just that formalized way to put your hands around it a little bit better, that you are dealing with people and you're applying processes, and there's lots and lots of things in a toolkit that are defined, that are very useful when you can just put your finger on the problem. If you can say, this is the thing that I'm seeing that might be, going wrong or that may not be working well, then I can actually pick out of a catalog of tools and say, here's the right thing that I can put into practice. Prior to getting this kind of formal structure around it, it's really just, it's up to each person to either have it naturally or not. And you may realize there's some things you can some books you can read, or some courses you can kind of attend that might sharpen your skills with communication, for example. But this kind of captured a lot of those aspects and gave us some structure to it. Absolutely agree with you, Aaron. This is something I wish many years ago I would have had the opportunity to learn, just because then I'd have had to, I feel like I would have been able to capitalize on all the opportunities I've had through the years up until this point a little bit more effectively versus just kind of winging it.
My question was going to be, how has facilitation skills with the training that through with us impacted or changed your leadership style and handled situations? You talked a little bit about people skills and soft skills, and how, like we say in the course, they shouldn't be called soft skills. They should be called hard skills, because people are hard to deal with. So how have those skills added to your leadership style?
It reinforced something that was there. Again, we recognize as leaders, it's important to actively listen. But this training, it just sort of reinforced that. It's helped me to be more observant and just a better active listener from across the group of people that I may be interacting with, just how important that is. And then I'll say also the purpose aspect of it. What is it that we're trying to achieve here as a group, as a team? Because a lot of times we're conditioned to just continue going through the motions. There's always this meeting on this thing. So we're just going to go into this meeting on this thing, and we're just going to come in and leave, and whatever gets accomplished gets accomplished. And it's just redefined. It's kind of reinforced that let's take a fresh look at everything, make sure that what we're doing, that every ounce of somebody's time that we're taking is really with a purpose. So that's something that I try to think of. If I'm going to speak, it's because I have something meaningful to say that's going to add value, versus just it's my turn to talk. Okay, let me waste everybody's time for a few minutes.
Yeah, I said that in the video before this one, and maybe you'll relate to this now. I thought I did buy-in and inclusion when I led meetings, when I was on active duty. And what I've come to realize is that I didn't. We thought we were doing that. We thought because we'd go around the room and everybody would get to speak, but I really wasn't taking in people's input and recording it, capturing it, so you could see what you could do later. I'm glad that you got that out of the course. That's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then I think a lot of times too, you think you get the entire crowd, but when you're not really looking for the dropout, or the silent ninja, or the person that's just not engaged, or even the person that has their arms crossed, that you thought you got what you needed out of them, but they still have some kind of axe back here that they have to grind. It's learning those immediate action drills to get that kind of information out of them. So in the past, you thought, oh yeah, I worked that crowd. Oh no, you didn't get every voice in there, right?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And especially in the military, we have a lot of, type A personalities. We all like to, maybe get our points across, have opinions. And so it's really easy for us to think that if we just say this is how it's going to be, and we just move forward, we've all sworn in to, follow orders and just do, move forward and step off. That must mean we're all on the same page. But it's not. Sure, we may all just say, well, yeah, we're going to step off and do this, but does that really actually mean buy-in? Not most of the time, probably not.
So I know you've talked to Jerry and I since you took the training, where you had facilitation first. And then, as you said in your intro, you had, Agile and PMP and other training afterwards. And you said, hey, how valuable it was to do facilitation first before all those courses. And so now that you've had, X amount of months with all this training, where does facilitation fit in? Like, what does facilitation mean to you at this point?
You said it really well in the class. You said, think of facilitation as like the underlying foundation that can really be put into any style of methodology. For example, with, the agile methodology, or with a more traditional style methodology, or whatever maybe the Marine Corps planning process, or joint planning process. Any methodology that you are sort of confined to in your line of work, I agree with you. The facilitation skills can be put in place underneath all of that to kind of, or even in a certain part or piece of that where they're useful, where it's most useful. So there may be a breakout where you have to go and now you're managing a session as a part of that whole team effort. Now you're kind of in the hot seat and you may have to really quickly get your team on the same page and build consensus around a particular piece of this. You can apply those facilitation skills there. Or maybe you're, like you said, the guerrilla style of facilitation where you're not really in charge, but you have influence in a group. And maybe there's some areas where you can try to kind of subversively build consensus a little bit.
I almost found it a little bit disheartening when we were preparing this course and translating facilitation into government military language. Was I reached out to several senior, military officers that had gone through our planning courses, like JAWS and SAWS, etc. And I said, okay, how much people/facilitation training did you get? And they said, not much, because it's process. Sure, there's people in the process, but it's all process. And almost like the agile training, it gets glossed over. Okay, you have a group of people, you're going to conform them to your will, and you're going to get to this product.
Exactly.
Well, dysfunction will rear its ugly head, even if you don't want it to. And you're going to have the loudmouth of the storyteller, the broken record of the attacker. They're going to be in there, especially with our alpha dominant personalities that are in the military and the government. It's definitely a need, I think.
Yeah, it's easy to get people to shut up and color, and they'll shut up, and you can force your will and just move on. But that doesn't at all indicate or imply success in the future. So once you get into the execution phase, I mean, boy, you're going to see how people really feel about the plan at that point, because you're going to see where the dysfunction starts to come out at that point. So you'd rather know up front that everybody actually has challenged the thinking and is able to poke holes in it up front. So that way everyone's bought in and you get consensus and you all step off, hopefully kind of on the same page. The other thing I'll say is, for example, the Agile, certified practitioner, there's a lot of components in there when it comes to people and team building that your curriculum actually had quite a few examples of all those people techniques that are also introduced just at a very, very low level of detail. So I love that I have the curriculum with me now, that I'm able to go and say, let me take a deeper look at this tool and how does this really work? To say, okay, I have some depth on these people skills from facilitation, because that's what that was really all about, that I can now add into the agile methodology that I'm working with, for example.
I used to say all the time when I would bring in facilitation trainers that the training itself was priceless, but then the resources and the materials that you can go to at any moment to pull out when you need it, the people technique, the agenda model, the process, whatever it is, it was there for you. And that was just as priceless as going through the training.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
So I have to ask you this question. We said in our training that the hidden dirty little secret of facilitation training is that once you've gone through the training, and then you go out back into the wild and you go to your very next unfacilitated meeting, working group, or whatever, like you used to be in pain before because of, inefficiencies or dysfunctional people or no purpose, no product. But now your pain is increased because there's a better way. Has that happened to you since
Absolutely. Absolutely. And immediately. Yes. So, I mean, again, I have a pretty high tolerance for understanding that there's going to be some battle rhythm things that just have to go and just have to happen. And, I try to make the most out of those opportunities. But yeah, I'd say too, where it's in my power, I've tried to just limit that from happening. I've tried to think about it. Yeah. Do I really need to waste everybody's time with a meeting for this? Or is this something we could just quickly communicate and tackle, just pushing some information out in another forum? So yeah, no, I've seen, it was painful for sure, sitting through a few different meetings that didn't quite have that purpose defined. But I will say, luckily in our organization, most of the folks that do a lot of the running of meetings and, typically within our battalion positions actually went to the facilitation training too. Yeah. So it was great. The next planning session that we sat through, of course, the leader for that right there alongside in the facilitation class. And the first thing he said was, the reason you're all here today is we're going to discuss this, here's your level of empowerment. And this is what we're expecting to come out of this meeting with today, and et cetera, et cetera. So it was great. It just made me feel like, okay, great. I know why I'm here, and we're taking this right for action. So it's good.
All boats rising together, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Could you imagine if we
less
were in the room
painful.
when that happened? There's no way. We'd have been like, yes.
No, we did. We all kind of gave the silent cheer, like, yeah, we're getting it. We're good.
Yeah. I love it. I think I stole one of your questions, Jerry.
Hey, you stole them all. It's okay, man. That's what you do. So I'm going to steal Aaron's question because he took mine. And I don't know if this is relevant or if we've even touched upon it, but neutrality. Neutrality is one that I think we hear students in the beginning that kind of doubt it. Like, how can I lead a group as the leader who cares and has passion about this project or this problem and maintain neutrality? And I know I struggled with it when I was on active duty because I wanted to roll my sleeves up and get involved and fix the problem. How about you? Have you struggled with the neutrality piece?
No, I mean, Chief Warrant Officers in the Marine Corps have never had a problem holding our opinions back. We never tend to have a strong opinion on anything.
Yeah.
No, I will say recognizing that's your role. If you recognize yourself as the facilitator, and then having gone through the course, just thinking about how neutrality can be important, it kind of becomes a lot easier to do in practice. I think the other thing that's contributed to this being a little easier for me is just analytical training, just understanding cognitive biases and being able to immediately recognize right away, when you think about thinking, do I feel a certain way about this topic? I do. Okay. So knowing that I feel a certain way about this, that's the first step. And now I can kind of be more aware and hold that back in order to be neutral and see what the team comes up with. So yeah, definitely some analytical thinking and some experience in that way has helped. But just through your course, just becoming aware that neutrality is something as a facilitator that you should be concerned about, because you're absolutely right. The moment I jump in a little too strong and agree with somebody on one of their points, and I show the group that I agree with them on that point, I've now lost, I'm kind of becoming the person that now groupthink is going to kind of focus on. Oh, okay,
Yeah.
let's get this done by just going that direction the facilitator's already going. And that misses the point. So
yeah, it's tough because you're so, influential in your unit, right? People look up to you, so they're going to follow you if you go one way or the other. I used to sit there with my peers, and I used to have to constantly remind myself that any of us in this room could solve this problem, but I'm the only one that can lead us where we're trying to go. Even if I wasn't the only one, that's how I would constantly say in my brain, anybody can be a participant in this room. Most people could solve this problem, but only I can lead us there as a group to a consensus, right? And so that's how I kept reminding myself of that over and over again when I wanted to jump in so bad.
The fact that we haven't had facilitation as really like a theme throughout military, PME, some of these concepts, they just never really get discussed. So we do a great job of servant leadership in the military. So we are used to trying to allow the ideas to come up from the bottom and to try to take everyone's input seriously. But we just don't always think about the fact that, and even in the interest of time, sometimes we just immediately give our opinions to just get this ball rolling. Let's get a decision made and let's go. So sometimes there's, with experience, sure, you may, and with a lack of time, you may have to just go ahead and make decisions and move forward. But when you have time and you really want this to be a collective process, you have to just give that process the full room to be executed in the way it needs to without jumping in and giving your opinion too soon.
What would you say has been your greatest facilitation success?
So I've had some success just by stepping back a little bit as the facilitator and saying, what does the group need in order to be successful in this? Not what do I think is the right answer, if that makes sense. Recognizing that I didn't need to have all the answers, but that I needed to get the group of the subject matter experts to provide their input so that we could make something happen.
You know what I'm going to ask next, because you remember from the course, we love to talk about our facilitation fails as examples, right? And Aaron likes to tell his stories of mine and we can all laugh at them. And it's not that we want you to fail, but I think in the course, we really encouraged you and others to really try stuff.
Knowing what I know now, I look back at many of the experiences, especially kind of starting out in the intelligence community, the intelligence side of the house. So we get a lot of requests for something. And I will say there's been plenty of times where we've just jumped right in. We didn't define what the definition of done was. We just jumped right in and we got to work and we all just sliced off our different parts of the problem and said, okay, you go do these things. You all know what you're good at. You go do your things. And we all came back together and it was a complete mess. And it was like, who was supposed to be bringing all this together and talking about what the definition of done was? And so I'll say that's probably the biggest facilitation fail that I have really learned hard lessons on. And you lose a lot of time, you lose a lot of, morale. And so it's helped me to learn how important it is at the very beginning, whether it's in your charter or it's in some collection of the stakeholders, to really talk about and define what the definition of done is prior to stepping off and doing any work on anything, or you're probably going to have a lot of waste in your process, more than a few failures, just especially early on that I see. That's a lesson that people learn all the time, over and over again.
Yeah, you'd think defining that purpose and product right out the beginning, we'd never forget to do that. But I'm laughing because I've done that, made that mistake too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, what's funny about going through the course is you hear about these different labels that we put on problem people or on dysfunctional behavior. And we can all think back and remember, oh yeah, I was that person in this meeting. Or you have images and faces of people that were like, oh yeah, the storyteller. Like you've got the image of that person that always starts every sentence with back in 1775.
Yeah.
For the record, that was never me. Okay. My stories, they may not always been awesome, but they were fast. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I've got that on one of my plaques. It's something like, sure, I'd be happy to give you my 2 cents. You have an hour? Something like that. So, yeah.
I think we all have those on one of our plaques, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So you mentioned it a little bit ago, Christine, about guerrilla facilitation or being a guerrilla facilitator and how you can use your skills, even if you're just a face in the crowd and you're not in charge of a group. So any stories you have for our listeners on where you were able to be an effective guerrilla facilitator?
Realizing when you have either some concerns or some dissent somewhere in the crowd, in the team, you can take action on that. Don't just let it fester. Don't let it just kind of go and pretend it doesn't exist. See it, identify it, and then, take action, do something about it. And especially if you've kind of gained a good rapport with your senior leaders, you're never just an inactive participant unless you choose to be. There's always something you can do that can make things better. So
another question I thought of, Christine, is you're kind of in a transition now with your military career, soon to be maybe civilian career. What are your facilitation goals? Like what are some facilitation related goals that you have coming up in the future?
So I'd really like to just apply this in just real world scenarios. I'd like an opportunity to just get really good at it. That's kind of, for me, my goal is, it's one thing to go through the training, go through the courses, do the education side of the house, maybe work it in a capacity where the stakes aren't very high and that kind of thing on a normal basis. But what I'm really excited about is just getting to where I can start applying this in real life scenarios with groups, and just get into a situation where I can work with a group and watch this grow, go through the phases of team development, just the process, and start to see it play out and learn on the go, and just actually see, okay, this worked, this didn't work. It's a little disheartening sometimes. I've heard some studies and some data that say something about 30-something% of projects fail. I think it's 18 or 19% of them are actually fully successful, and everything else is kind of in between. So I want to try to learn how to get into that percentage that are really thriving, that are succeeding. And I think facilitation, the people side, especially for me, what I'm excited to put into practice, just get on the job and start doing it.
Something I was thinking about while you were talking, most of the time when we think about facilitation skills, we think about, okay, how do we apply them in our work environment? But I found now, especially, that I'm teaching facilitation and try to use it as much as possible. I've had
Sure.
several avenues in my personal life where I've been able to apply these skills. I volunteered for my church's leadership council to facilitate a session for them, which has led now to a nonprofit group that I'm going to work with to help them come up with mission, vision, values, and strategy. And so you can get experience, of course, in your day job, but there's also opportunities I've found in your personal life that you can put the skills to use.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah.
And I'm jealous of both you, what you're talking about, because as you were talking, I was thinking, I haven't gotten the opportunity to use my facilitation skills somewhere where they don't know who I am. And Christine's getting ready to do that, and Aaron's been able to do that, where you walk in a room and they don't know based on, hey, your uniform or your reputation. You're walking into a whole new environment, and you're actually going to use these skills, and they're not going to know everything that's behind it, all the years of experience that you have behind it. It's not nerve-wracking to me. It's exciting. I would love to, it's almost like a sneak up on people, you know what I mean? And so Aaron's got to do it, and I haven't got a chance to do it, so I'm excited for you. I want to hear all about it.
Yeah, I appreciate it. No, it is exciting.
I mean, you took our course, so maybe one final opinion from you to our viewers out there, what you like best about it, or if they were intrigued about gaining these types of skills, you kind of touched on it, what would you tell someone who's thinking about going to the course?
Yeah, so I would say, first of all, there's really no level of experience that's required. This is something that for anybody at all, whether they're in a really leadership capacity or you're just part of a team, should definitely go through this, because I think it will really reinforce so many aspects of just interpersonal relationships that, like you said, Aaron, it could be for personal situations or scenarios. It could be something that really gives you the confidence to step up in more of a leadership capacity and manage teams more effectively. I think it's a win-win, no matter what your level of experience is. So I would absolutely advocate for anybody at any rank, any grade to jump in and do this. And then kind of back to what I said at the beginning, this is really like the how to me of being a good leader or facilitating a team or a session, meetings, whatever it is. This is the how. It really gives you the techniques, to the framework to say, this is what we need to accomplish. So here's how we're going to do it. Let's put some pieces together. Let's make a puzzle that really works for this group to get us the result that we really need, that we want to achieve. We complain and make memes and all kinds of fun stuff about how much time is wasted. Yep. And if you really care and you want to make things better, then get better at facilitating. And I think for me, that's something that, I want to keep kind of going back to the books and just kind of remind myself, what are some of the tools that I can do that I can put into practice here just to make things better. So I think if you're like me and it's easy for you to identify the problems, let's find a way to solve the problems. And that's the other half of it. That's most important, I think.
I love it. Jerry and I have really appreciated your time for this video. And I'll tell you, at least from my perspective, I won't speak from Jerry, but I learned some things and put together some things just by hearing you talk. And so again, we truly appreciate you spending the time to spend with Jerry and I and to share with our viewers.
Oh, I was just going to say you're the best. You probably already knew that, but yeah, we love you. Appreciate you coming on. Good luck to you in all your future endeavors.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. Thanks for having me on again.
1, 2, 3.
Boom.
Boom. Boom.
She delayed the boom.